This video tutorial covers Pause and Practice 2-3 from Chapter 2 of your textbook. We'll be taking a look at creating a second table in Design View and adding it to this database. Once we get the table design pretty much put together, we'll take a look at applying the relationships between the two tables, and then we'll also take a look at importing some records so that we don't have to add the actual physical records to the table that we just created. So as you can see, I have the database from Pause and Practice 2.2 open, and I'm going to go ahead and just add a table to that. So I'm going to go to Create, and on the Create tab of the ribbon, I'm going to choose to create a table in Design. So I'm going to choose Table Design, and I'm going to follow along here with the textbook. And the first thing we're doing is a field called Service ID. That is ultimately going to be a short text field because it is going to be our primary key. For the sake of sanity of watching this video, I'm not going to type the descriptions for each field. However, it is really important that you do that. It's good documentation, and it's also good user assistance for data entry folks as they see this description when they're entering data in a record in that particular field. So let me see, what else do we have here? Short text. We do want to make that the primary key, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that while I'm in this field for the moment. And then if you are looking at the Pause and Practice, you can see there's an entire table of fields here that they would like me to enter. So I'm going to try to do that as quickly as possible. Service date's going to be a date time. And a lot of these are short text, so I think at this point I'm just going to keep quiet, type these up, and then fast forward through it. Okay, so I've defined the fields in the table. I've defined their field name and their data type. Just a couple of things here. We do have a couple of number fields. We'll need to further define those in the field properties. Access is not very forgiving when it comes to data type of number and whether or not the format needs changed after records have been entered, so more on that later. We have total cost of currency. The other thing I wanted to bring mention to here, and we haven't really discussed it yet because we haven't really done a whole lot of discussion about relationships, is that they are using the naming convention of FK to indicate that this equipment ID field will be the foreign key in this table. And essentially what a foreign key is it's the duplication of the primary key from the primary table in a one-to-many relationship. So you need to have a common field with a common data type. You don't have to have the field names identical, although it is helpful for people who are trying to figure out your database design. You also don't have to put FK in front of it either. Again, that's just a naming convention, and that is something that is essentially just a matter of preference. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this as the book suggests. I'm going to call it Service History. And just a sneak peek real quick here, that's what we have thus far. You can see the defaults for fields like number and currency. And I'm going to head back over into Design View because we have some work to do here regarding the field properties. So for Service ID, they want us to make sure that this short text field only holds up to 6 characters, so we'll go ahead and plug that into the field size. Now this is the primary key, so our required property should already be set to yes for this one. And of course, and they don't get into this in the Pause and Practice because they've also covered it once before, but where you are omitting spaces in your design field names, you probably do want to add caption properties to enhance the readability for your users, for your forms and reports, if you're going to print your reports especially. Let's see, what else can we do here? Service date, they want that stored as just a general date format, so we'll go ahead and we'll do that. There we go. General date includes date and time. For service type, did I forget a field? As I was typing along, it appears as though I have. I want the service type field to be 15. Oh, I did. I missed that right there. It was supposed to be right under service date. So I'm just going to select the row and move it up there where it belongs. I missed that in the initial table, so my apologies. All right. Next thing we have is the description. They want to keep that at the max 255. They do want that required. I also missed some required properties here, so let me backtrack. And then we have the FK equipment ID, which is going to be 5 characters. That's going to be required. I apologize, I'm just jumping all around here. Performed by, they want that to be 3. Also required. And the total cost set to currency, which we already have. So we are good to go there. I'm just going to jump up here and hit the Save button. They don't talk a lot about number in this one, and they are keeping the number to a long integer in both of these. Do keep in mind that number will not hold decimal precision. It'll round, so be very careful. You probably either want decimal, single, or double if you're looking for decimal precision. So apparently they're never going to have like 3.5 hours in the service history, at least based on the fact that they're leaving these as long integers right now. So that is something that again is not forgiving. You know, I can't store 100 records with hours as a long integer and then realize, oh, it rounded everything, and then go back and change it to say single. It will not magically update the number, so you have to be very careful about choosing the right additional formatting properties to number fields when you're designing your table, which is why it's so very important that you always, test and pilot your database. All right, so the next thing that we take a look at is the service type field. We've determined that we would like that to be a lookup. So here's the deal. They have maintenance, repair, and inspection are their service types. So we're going to go ahead and instead of making our data entry person type that in, we're going to go to service type, go to the data type field, property, choose lookup wizard. We've done this once before. Again, we're going to type the values that we want, and in this particular case we're talking about maintenance. We're also talking about repair and inspection. And I'm going to go ahead and choose next. We'll keep the name as service type. We do want to limit to the list. We're not going to allow multiple values here. They don't want that either, so we'll just go ahead and choose finish. And then let's sneak a peek over and see what that looks like. Alright, so there's the fields that we've created. Again, we don't have any, except for this first one that I did as a demo, we don't have any caption properties. So this isn't looking real pretty as of right now, but here's that lookup field that we created that would be available for them to choose rather than type the choice here. Now that is pretty much it. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at creating relationships. So just as a reminder, we have the equipment ID, which is a short text field size of 5. And if I go over into the equipment table, we have equipment ID, which is a short text field of 5. So before you can make a relationship between fields between tables in Microsoft Access, they have to have similar properties and the same data type. So kind of an apples to apples idea. So that's why I wanted to remind you of what the original equipment ID field was in the primary table of equipment. So here's what relational databases are all about, creating the relationships, which make sure that your data has integrity and it allows you to update it quickly or delete related records quickly. So I'm going to go to Database Tools up here at the top, and I'm going to click on the Relationships button. And we know, because we've pretty much built both of these, that we have an equipment table and a service history table. So I'm going to add both of those and close. And then I'm just going to make some adjustments here so that I can see all of the fields in each table. Now you can see the primary key has been defined. This table is all about equipment. There's a good couple of pages in your textbook that talk about steps to take when you're designing tables and things to consider with fields as you design a database. And the book keeps it, very vanilla when they talk about it. But one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that, every table you should be able to look at it and kind of ascertain its purpose very quickly. So I can look at this equipment table and pretty much tell you, oh yeah, this defines the equipment and the cost of rental for this equipment. And I can look at this table and go, oh yeah, this tracks the maintenance and when these things have been serviced as they've been in existence as rental products for us. So here it's the equipment ID that identifies the piece of equipment in the record, and here it's the service ID that actually identifies that service record. So this is going to be a one-to-many. There's one piece of equipment that's going to have many service history records. So here's equipment ID to equipment ID, primary key to foreign key. So basically what you're going to do here is you're going to click and hold and drag from the primary key field in the equipment table over to and pointing to the related field in the service history table. And when I let go, I'm going to get an Edit Relationships dialog box. It's already picking up on the design of the tables and what the primary keys are in each of the tables, and it's going, this is going to be a one-to-many relationship, and that's correct. I do want to enforce the referential integrity. What that means is I can never have a service history record for a piece of equipment that doesn't exist. So if you've tried to track data in Microsoft Excel, you've probably found or run into maybe orphan records where you've got a transaction record for something, but you don't have a primary record to match it back to. Referential integrity will not allow that to happen. I can never go into the service history table and add a record for a piece of equipment that doesn't already exist in the equipment table. Cascade update related fields, essentially all that this would do at this point is if I changed the equipment identification number in the equipment record, it would find all the related records in the service history table and update that equipment ID number there as well. And then cascade delete related records, you want to be careful here because if I do delete a piece of equipment, all the service history would be deleted with it as well. It makes sense to cascade delete, for instance, if you have a vendors table and then products in a table that you can purchase from that vendor and that vendor goes out of business, it would make sense that you'd want to eliminate the vendor and all the products that you could have potentially bought from them. But in the case of the equipment, I don't know that I would keep cascade delete related records turned on. I think maybe it would be better to archive records if the equipment was no longer in service, or add a field that talked about when they were taken out of service, and then of course narrowing down what's still in service versus not with a query. And this is the great part about Microsoft Access. There are so many different ways in which you can come up with solutions in your design to move forward with characteristics of a business that you may not have thought of initially when you designed that database. But for the purposes of this particular video, I'll keep that checked, and I'm going to go ahead and choose Create. So what we have now is the relationship line. This is a one-to-many relationship. We've got an infinity symbol here indicating many. If I double click this line, I can get back in and change any characteristics of the relationship. If I right click on the line, I can get back into edit, or I can delete the relationship. So you want to make sure that before your database goes out to be piloted or tested by a group of individuals, that you do in fact have all of your proper relationships defined within that table design structure to make sure that you are testing that integrity, and then of course going back and maybe perhaps testing your cascade update and delete if necessary. So I'm going to close the relationships window. Notice that it's asking me if I want to save changes to the layout. Okay, so if I choose no, I still have my relationship. When you say save changes to layout, that means the next time I come back into Database Tools Relationships, those tables are sized the way that I had them sized and a way that I had them arranged. So do be aware that if you need to delete a relationship, you're doing that on a right click and deleting the relationship. Saving the layout has nothing to do with deleting the actual relationship. All right, I'm going to choose close here. So now we have two related tables. This is kind of exciting. We don't have any service history though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that in from Microsoft Excel. So in this Pause and Practice 2-3, there was a link at the top to pull in this particular Excel file so that you could then go to External Data, New Data Source from File, Excel, and I'm going to browse out, and I'm going to grab this particular file. So here's the service history. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. I do want to append it, and I want to append it to service history. So very much like we did in the last Pause and Practice, I'm going to choose OK. This is my service data. Now this is interesting. You know, this is a textbook file, so of course it's going to work perfectly. Always check out the file that you're going to import before you import it to make sure that things that you've defined in the table are being met by the data that you're about to import. If not, you'll get a series of import errors. I'm going to choose next and finish. No, I don't want to save these steps. And now I should have some history in my service history table. All right, as I open up the equipment table, new thing shows up. This is one way to look at a relationship. As I expand on this backhoe record, click the drop down, you can see that it has numerous service history records associated with it. This one only has one. This one only has one. This one has none. I guess you don't really have to run too much service on a wheelbarrow. But so if a product, in this particular case of a piece of equipment, has yet to be serviced in any way, shape, or form, obviously there's not going to be a related record. If you're very new to Access and you're worried about this, you're going, oh my goodness, is this the only way that I can look at related records in Microsoft Access? Oh heavens no. As we go through more chapters of this textbook, you're going to find that just having it build an auto form based off of the primary table in a relationship is going to give you a really nice one-to-many form environment with a form with a subform. This is where you would be adding service records. It's highly unlikely, and I've just done that real quick here to give you an idea of what that would look like. It's very unlikely in a fully developed database that you're going to be, sitting at the table level adding records this way. I mean, you can, but it's certainly not the easiest on your data entry folks, or the safest for that matter. So we'll take a look at putting that one-to-many relationship in a form with a subform as we progress throughout other chapters of the textbook. So in a nutshell, we're looking here at establishing that relationship. We talked a lot about field properties, and we'll see them in more lessons as we move forward in this book. We're certainly not done discussing the design of a table, but the database tools is where we set our relationships, and this is really the heart and soul of what makes Microsoft Access function and why people use Access in the first place. So more on this, and as we get into next week, more on the idea of talking about database normalization, and we'll put some more technical terms to these things that you've done here inside of Chapter 2. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.